Good morning, everybody. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. It gives me absolute pleasure to be talking to you again today. My presentation for today is called Speaking from the Heart. COVID-19 has presented us with a magical opportunity. The Chinese write the word crisis with two symbols. The one symbol stands for danger. The other symbol stands for opportunity. So in times of crisis, depending how you react and respond to what's coming to you in the world, you can either take this as an opportunity or take it as something bad, as a crisis. And I think COVID-19 is giving us both. We are in danger if we don't take care of each other. But as speakers, as people who have voices and who want to communicate and connect with the world, there is a social revolution right now where people are so connected online on platforms like this, doing conferences, speaking to other people because of the social isolation that we're experiencing. So my mother said that I started talking the minute I came out of her womb. The previous speaker was talking about womb wisdom. And I think for anybody who feels the urge to speak, to sing, to express vocally, we are born with these gifts. I remember my parents used to tell me that I didn't walk very quickly. Everybody thought I was actually disabled because I was crawling until I was almost a year old. But my mother said the thing that told them I wasn't disabled was that I could speak. And I was such a chatty little girl. I was punished for speaking at school. Little did I know that years later, the use of my voice would turn into a career. I learned how to speak from the heart when I went to speak at a conference in Mexico. It was a large event with about 3,000 people. I was the keynote speaker, flown all the way from New Zealand to Mexico City. And because Spanish and my mother tongue, Shona, phonetically sounds the same, I decided to start my presentation in Spanish. So one of my friends translated the opening paragraph of my speech into Spanish. And from the airport to the venue, she corrected a few things. And I got up on stage, opened my presentation in Spanish, and then the technology failed. So I had a PowerPoint presentation I was relying on. The computer and the data projector wouldn't work. And I'm standing in front of 3,000 people thinking, what am I going to do now? I remember closing my eyes and I went inward and I asked the question, what is my next step? How may I serve? And the answer came back like a clear voice in my head. And the voice directed me to take off my shoes so I could be grounded and for me to speak from the heart. I delivered the most authentic presentation I've ever given before in my life. I got to a point where I did not know what I said. It was as if something had taken over my body. And the way I strung together the words, the way I articulated my presentation was so perfect. I could not have written that down and memorized it. And at the end of the presentation, I was at the back of the room selling my books, and people were coming and shaking my hand and thanking me for the presentation. And I remembered one lady asking me to write down a quote of something I said, and I could not remember what I had said. I remember a man who came up to me and he asked if he could hug me. And he said to me, Gertrude, you move me to tears and I don't cry. Do you mind if I hug you? And he put his arms around me and I zapped him. There was an electrical static force between the two of us. And I remember he was very hairy and the hair on his arms was standing this high. He had a hairy chest, his shirt stood up. It was the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And he said to me, do you realize that you channel when you speak? And I said, no, I don't do that. What are you talking about? He said, "You are channeling. Something takes over when you speak." And that's when I first realized the power of my voice and how I was communicating. He advised me to go onto the Heart Math Institute's website and to start studying the use of my heart while I'm speaking. And I learned that the human heart has a magnetic field that spans the length of your arms. You know how sometimes somebody can walk into a room and before they open their mouths, you feel something negative coming from them? Well, as human beings, we are giving out this magnetic impulse every single second, every single day. And people pick up on that vibration. And so I started studying and I started learning more about how to use my heart while I was speaking. So a lot of people prepare for presentations and they are technically good. They go to Toastmasters, they can deliver an authentic presentation, but they fail to connect with the audience and they wonder why. I have now learned how to master and coach people on how to deliver a presentation from here. You see, the thing is, when you practice and rehearse a presentation to perfection, to a point where you know every single word, a lot of times you are in your head and you're just trying to remember the words that you're supposed to say. However, if you try and memorize your presentation and drop into your heart when you speak, that's when you make that heart-to-heart connection with your audience. And my journey created a magical speaking career all over the world. I started speaking professionally when I got to New Zealand. I had just written my first book, and the book was a fundraising tool. I just wanted to be able to sell my story and raise money to support family members back in Zimbabwe who had died of HIV-related diseases and they had left children. So the AIDS pandemic had impacted my family in a really big way. This is actually my second pandemic. I was actually laughing with my kids the other day, and I said, if I survive this one, this will be the second time round. I remember what I'm watching now on the news with COVID-19, the mass burials, the graves. I remembered going to a funeral just before I came to New Zealand. I buried a cousin of mine. The week that I was leaving, another cousin died, and I went back to the same graveyard. I had 2 bunches of flowers because I wanted to leave flowers on the previous grave. And I had to walk 2 kilometers to find the other cousin's grave. It was as if we were in the middle of a war and there wasn't a war. And now I'm experiencing the same thing now with COVID-19. And I could never quite explain to people how the AIDS pandemic had impacted on us as people in Southern Africa. Now, COVID-19 has literally united humanity. I don't think there's a single person on this planet who's not affected by this pandemic. And so I was able to communicate my grief, to communicate the pain that I felt by giving these presentations and selling my book. Before I knew it, people started passing my contact details to event planners. I started being invited to speak at conferences. I started investing in myself and getting coaching and mentoring so I could be able to speak and share my message. And through my coaching, I discovered that there is a secret structure to putting together a good presentation. Good presentations start off with what is. If you can go on TED and find this speech, it's called The Secret Structure of Great Talks. This researcher looked at presentations by Martin Luther King, JFK, Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, and found that there is a rhythm to a good speech. If you listen to Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, he starts off with what is the painful situation for African American people in the United States in the 60s and the civil rights movement. He then takes you up on a curve to the dream of the possibility of how America could look if people were given equal rights? And he makes you live that dream for a few minutes, and then he brings you down to the current reality. And he tells you the story of the hardships of African American people. And then he takes you back to the dream. So most good speeches have got that rhythm of going up, across, down, across, up, across, down, across. And you can literally map all of the great speeches by the best orators in the world in this way. And so I started using that in my presentations, and magical things started to happen. I started being invited to speak, all on the Ubuntu philosophy. And I can't explain how in the last 20 years, I've been to 56 countries. I couldn't tell you how many cities in between. I've been right across the globe as an inspirational speaker, and life has been absolutely magical. But whenever you deliver a good speech, you need to know who you're speaking to. Who is your avatar? Who is your target market? What are you trying to say to that person who's in the audience, who's going to take action based on your life, based on your life experience, and do something to not only to change their lives, but to change other people's lives as well? My avatar are change makers. I work with people who feel that they have a burning story in their souls, a message that they were born to give and to share. And I help them birth that story and bring it out into the world. I help speakers develop a process where they can actually make a living from their speaking as well, where you can take your intellectual IP, your ideas, and turn them into a really robust business. I help change makers who want to change their environment so that we can create a better future for our children. I love working with visionaries, people who can see into the future of what is possible if we change things the way they are now. My biggest passion right now is to work with tribal leaders, people who are trying to identify people like them and to create a tribe and grow their tribes online and offline. And I also have a passion to work with serial social entrepreneurs like myself, people who go into business so that they can make money and make a difference somewhere else in the world. So I want to leave you with a few things. If you are somebody who feels that you are a speaker, it doesn't matter that you've never done this before. Most of my clients are women over the age of 50, women who had held back all their lives from saying what was in their hearts. And I create programs that are tailored to every single person's individual needs. All of the processes that I teach are tried and tested. I help my clients to find their voices, deliver their authentic presentations, because I believe that we change the world through our stories, one person at a time, one woman at a time. And if I can empower women to get up and speak and be heard, I know that we are all part of an amazing social revolution and that this is our time. One, particularly because we are women and the world is in a mess, and we need to infuse a feminine energy into the world in positions of power, in politics, our civil leaders in our communities. Women need to step up and be heard. I look at my Prime Minister here in New Zealand and the way she handled COVID-19. New Zealand is one of the few countries that is now open and back to business. We are watching the rest of the world struggling, trying to handle this pandemic. And it's because women have that empathy, we have that compassion, and we think of other people. That's what's missing with most heads of states in the world. They are men who are dominating, who have pride, who don't think about the other. It's time for us to think about each other in the world and make a difference in that sense. And if you are a woman of color, again, this is our time. A lot of times in our history, women of color have been marginalized and standing on the sideline of life. When I lived in South Africa just before apartheid ended, I realized that the African woman was classified at the bottom of the totem pole. During apartheid, there was a structure where if you were 01, you were a male European, 02, female European, 03, colored European, 04, colored male, 05, Indian European, 06, Indian male, 07, African male, and 08 was the Black woman. So this is our time, ladies. Step up, be heard, use your voices, and change the world. If you want to get in touch with me and find out how you can get coaching and mentoring to use your voice and step up and be heard, please get in touch with me. Become part of our movement. It's called the Her Story Circle, and the website is theherstorycircle.com. And thank you to the Best You Expo Los Angeles for bringing us online and helping our voices be heard all over the world. Thank you.